All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. So this is the Town of Monroe Board of Finance special meeting. Today's Wednesday, March 26, 2025 at 6 p.m. And this is our budget workshop. And I'm going to just go ahead and take attendance. Catherine Stoffer.
Here.
Steve Hirsch.
Here.
Samantha Spino.
Here.
Nick Sentimentes.
Here.
Mark O'Donnell, which I don't, is he one of the participants? Can you just check? No, okay, so. All right, perfect. So tonight we are meeting with the Board of Education to review their proposal in the budget. And I don't know if Ron or, did you want to start, Joe?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all for being here, and I also want to thank my staff, all the principals and directors. Here's a copy of the,
Yes.
just some
Use our
slides.
back. Thank you.
I just want to thank them all for being here tonight. I'm sure if you have questions, hopefully Ron or I can answer them. I know they can. They live this every day. So I'm going to try to take you through the, I call the Reader's Digest version of this. I know you all probably have seen it before. That I just wanted to, just kind of walk you through kind of what went on through the development process and just kind of share the requests that we made and also the mitigation strategy that we started to prepare for the initial adjustment that we had. So, yeah. So when we put this budget together, there's really 4 priorities that we have, and you'll see me come back to these priorities throughout the presentation. The first one was to meet the increasingly complex needs of the students. When we talk about complex needs of students, we're talking really about 3 groups of kids: our special education students, our free and reduced price lunch students, and also our students whose first language is not English, our multilingual language students. So you'll see some requests that are particular to that priority. Another thing, the second priority was we wanted to untether our staff from our schools. So you'll see there are times where we do things efficiently to the point of inefficiency, and we share staff, which is great. But when you share staff, that staff has to travel from one building to the next, and when that happens, you lose time. All staff have to have a contractual lunch. They have to have a contractual preparation period. We can't tell them to eat in the car on the way to the next school. So we lose some time there. And it's also, you'll see when we talk about particularly a music position, how that is constrained schedules at all 3 levels. We want to address our technology infrastructure. Last year, the Board of Education implemented a one-to-one initiative. We want to be able to support that. And finally, we want to replenish the maintenance accounts. Last year, part of our mitigation strategy was to hit the facilities accounts. We tried to have any impacts be as far away from students as possible. So last year, we kind of hit our maintenance accounts, and we wanted to get those back, knowing that any kind of deferred maintenance that we do, can save money in the short run, but in the long run, ends up usually costing you a little bit more, or sometimes a lot more. We have been fortunate this year. We did use our revenue account. Our facilities revenue account, our rental account, as a place to backstop any of that work. We're fine in that area right now. Project out to be fine. When we put the budget together, there's certain assumptions that we put together. The first thing that we did is we believe that next year, and this is the important thing because we've been adding sections, especially at the elementary level, we want to maintain the current number of sections that we have. So that was an assumption going into the budget that we made in November. Right now, that's still holding up to be true. I hope that continues to be the case. This was put together, when we presented to the Board of Education. So, we had I know we've talked about it, and you guys are familiar with this already. We were told to budget between 10 and 12% for insurance. We put in 12%. Then it was said, put in between 11 and 13%. Fortunately, it came out at about 11%. So this budget assumed a 12% increase in insurance. So we have a little bit of a pickup there. On the flip side of that, when we put this together, our assumption was that, our utilities would be based on kind of our historical trends. And we're running hotter this year in utilities. I know Ron's talked about that before. And we used that data this year to project out to next year. Again, this budget assumes special education numbers based on the current census. Jen and Marissa start putting the special education budget together in October, November. Students, come in and out of special education all year. That number has increased. The concern is always if you get a high cost student, that could throw that budget way off. And obviously, we all still can go to the store and talk about the price of eggs. Continue to live in an inflationary period. This slide here, I think, really does a nice job of explaining what we're asking for this year. And if you look at this, those items that are in blue, those were our proposed new positions for this year. And if you look at the salaries of those new positions, so if you look at our complete ask or our increase of $4.3 million, you notice about $470,000 of that is in those new positions. So, of that $4.3 million, there's about 3.9 of that was contractual obligations, our salary increases, insurance, retirements, all that other stuff. This year, I broke up the budget in a couple of different ways for people to look at it. One was, this is more just out of interest than anything, by department, so you can look at special education, high school, each elementary school, Jockey Hollow, insurance, all that. You see where obviously the bigger areas are in special education, Massac, which is the bigger of the schools, and insurance. But you kind of see where everyone kind of gets a piece of, everybody fits along that piece of the pie, all the way to athletics, which makes up, just about probably a little bit less than 1% of the entire budget. When you look at it by object code or expenditure type, you're not surprised, this is a human resources business. It's people. That salaries and benefits make up 81% of our budget. As we are working through the district facility study, we engaged with NP Planning, who did a demographic study for us. You'll notice that we hit our low around 2000. Very interesting. I've talked about this before. We hit a low of students in 2018, 19, 2019, 20, about 31, 36. The pandemic happened, and then you see what's happened since then. We're up. That 3456 is our October 1 numbers. Enrollment is captured twice in the state of Connecticut, officially twice in the state of Connecticut. We capture it every week, but as of October 1, we're at 3456. It's captured on October 1st and the last day of school. So we've, in the past 5 years, we're up 320 students. You see the projection going forward, but you also see out into next year, 25, 26. Don't think that, again, I said we're hoping to maintain class sizes. This is more as we look to the future of what we have to do in the district. All right, so I go back to those budget priorities. I'm going to talk about these first three positions. So that first budget priority, we talk about meeting the increasingly complex needs of students. The first thing that we asked for in this budget was an additional multilingual language teacher. Currently, we have 2 teachers that travel to 5 different schools. At the time of the budget, we had 88 multilingual learner students across the 5 schools. We're actually at 91 now. There are recommended minimum amount of service that the state and federal government recommends that kids get, and you'll see that we're not meeting those recommendations. That doesn't allow our current MLL teachers time to push into classes or to coach teachers, because one of the things we want to do is give teachers the strategies to be able to work with their multilingual learner students. This is just a little bit of a graph. I always kind of joke about 12 years ago, we had one part-time multilingual learner teacher who serviced the entire district. We had about 10 kids. You see, this is everything I give you for trends is over the last 10 years, and you can see what's happened over the last 10 years. It'll be very interesting too when you look at it by school. Here's that same number over the last 10 years. One thing I just want to point out, because I'll talk a little bit more about Stepney in a bit. As you look at this line here, you can't really tell the schools, but each of those is each year by school. When you get to these last five years here, you see that high blue line there. That's Stepney. We have a high concentration of multilingual learner students at Stepney. You see the last 3 years, 23, 31, and 26 at Stepney alone.
So can I just ask you a question? So just from my understanding, because I'm not familiar with kind of how this is set up,
Mhm.
Are teachers going, do they do it by grade? Do they pull students out so multiple children across different grades are together and like, kind of like a what you need now type of scenario?
I think it varies at the levels. At the elementary, is it by grade?
Yeah, there's a grade. Small groups,
Okay.
and like a pull-out set. And sometimes the teacher does push in depending on, what the child needs.
Okay,
Needing to change the classroom.
right. Okay, all right, thank you. Just wanted to
No, you got it.
clarify.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Then if you look at the recommended service time that kids are supposed to get, and so when kids come in, they take something called the last links, which is their language acquisition, which determines their language acquisition level. And that goes everywhere from newcomer down to level 5. Newcomer is obviously that student who comes to us speaking absolutely zero English, all the way down to level 5, the kids who are progressing out of the program. Right now, for the most part, this is a little deceiving. I want to be completely transparent. Our current service per week for our elementary kids is about 30 minutes. The recommendation is 150. At the middle school and high school, just based on the schedule, we do get closer in that newcomer and level 1 areas of meeting them, just because it's a block schedule. But we have a number of students. So you saw the number, that's definitely kids getting 30 minutes of service as newcomers and level 1. So we're not meeting those, we're not meeting those needs. I'll move on to the second position here is a math specialist position. Full disclosure on this one too, the elementary principals came to me. They asked for 3 elementary math specialists. I knew that, in any year, it's a difficult year to bust that many folks. So, we agreed that, or we didn't agree on anything. Right, we agreed, yes. Knowing the situation we have, we said, listen, let's try to get one this year. We give a lot of support to English language arts. We have a reading consultants in every building that work with the reading specialists that work with students. Those reading specialists work with students. They push into classrooms. They pull kids out. And even above the reading consultant, we have an elementary instructional leader for English language arts. On the math side of that, all we have is a math instructional leader who's actually I shouldn't say part-time. It's actually split between math and science. So the other thing is, we know during COVID, one of the biggest areas that got hit was math instruction. If you look at not just our SBAC scores, just SBAC scores around the country, you'll see that was probably the biggest slide was in mathematics. So this person would work directly with our instructional leader in mathematics to go in, push into classrooms, work with some of our resources and curriculum, illustrative math, building thinking classrooms, which are those instructional strategies, instructional shifts to get kids performing in mathematics. This person would provide what we call tier 2 and 3 support. So tier 1 support is kind of your classroom intervention, tier 2 is small group, and tier 3 is individual support. So this person would be providing tier 2 and 3 support through what's called the MTSS process, which is really just looking at the individual needs of every child. And they would also look at our data and work with that, like I said, that math instructional leader to help students in that area. Again, a lot of support in ELA makes sense. It's literacy, but this is equally as important as well. Next, again, I'm still on this same priority. The first, I think, 4 asks all kind of fell under this priority of the increasingly complex needs of students. Is a halftime school psychologist. Again, I want to be completely transparent. This would be making a current halftime position full-time, but the problem we have right now is we have a halftime position in the budget. This current one that we're living right now, that's empty because it's hard to get a halftime school psychologist. They are in high demand. You can get a halftime job in Monroe, or you can get a full-time job in just about any other district. So this would be making that position a full-time position, and there's an additional need for it. This reflects part of that need. You look at our enrollment from, again, 10 years ago. Again, I talk about enrollment being captured twice. The 2 lines there for each year are October 1 and the end of the school year. And you can see our trajectory in special education, which again reflects what's happening throughout the state and throughout the nation to where we are today. At budget time, we were at 644 kids, and today we are at 681 special education students. That's a number that only grows as the year goes on, because we're also accepting kids, especially into our pre-K program. Steve?
And what percentage of students is that now? 19%.
So the last time that we reviewed this, when this binder was distributed, I had a number, we were at 644. Did we climb 40 kids since then?
Yes.
Okay.
Here's the need for the additional school psychologists. If you'll notice here on this chart right here, I have each school psychologist at each school. At some schools, you'll see Jockey Hollow, there's 2. At Massac, there's 2. You'll notice a discrepancy, and there's 2 bar graphs there. The lighter bar graph that's a little bit more difficult to see here is the current caseload, so that's counseling that school psychologist does. And the blue was at the time when I presented the budget is the number of evaluations that person was responsible for doing. You'll notice a discrepancy. First of all, at Fawn Hollow, a school psychologist is way overloaded there. So we want to be able to level that person out so they have a similar workload to their counterparts in the other schools. And then if you look at the far right end, you'll notice I talked about that halftime psychologist that we haven't been able to fill. So what we've been doing is with the funds from that halftime person that we don't have, we've been paying the our school social worker at the alternative school extra to do the counseling for a number of students. And then we've been hiring an outside, we call it an outside contractor. It is an outside contractor. It's just a retired school psychologist who was with us for a number of years. So we're lucky we're able to cover it like that, but we would prefer to have a full-time school psychologist to pick up that load as well as ease the load at Fawn Hollow. So this would be kind of a split position, little easier to split a school psychologist position who's not tied to a bell schedule. The last one in this priority area, I talked earlier about high need students in those 3 areas. And that is the assistant principal at Stepney, because if you look at Stepney, they have some of the highest needs in the district, even though it's not necessarily the largest school. They have 83 special education students compared to Fawn Hollow, which is bigger, but that has 97, but it is significantly bigger. I talked about the MLL students, and Stepney also has a higher free and reduced price lunch population than the district. The district average is about 17%. The free and reduced price lunch folks at Stepney make up about 19.5%. Last year, we went to the Board of Education, and I get it. I understand the ask, and it's a big ask, especially asking for an administrator. Last year, in our district reference group, which is other towns like Monroe, so it's your Newtowns, your Trumbolls, your Fairfields, your Avon, Simsbury's, Guilford, Madison. Those are the schools that we're often compared to in our district reference group. Last year, we had the largest school in our district reference group without an assistant principal. That was Fawn Hollow. We had 700 kids, over 700 kids. We got an assistant principal at Fawn Hollow. This year, we still have the dubious distinction of having the largest elementary school in our district reference group without an assistant principal at Stepney. In fact, there was only one other school with more than 500 students that didn't have an assistant principal. They had 503 students. It was actually, I know the superintendent, so I called her and I said, hey, I noticed you have 503 students, and are you putting in for an assistant principal? She said, no, I'm redistricting the elementary school. So that one's gonna have about 425 kids next year. We don't have that luxury here. It's definitely a third rail that people don't want to hear it too. It's redistricting. So just to give you some background on that. So that kind of hits that first budget priority. The next one was, as I mentioned before, we want to untether our shared staff for a number of things. And this is one position you'll see in my mitigation strategy. This is one of the proposed positions that we really feel strongly about, and in our proposed mitigation strategy that we agreed to keep. This was a request that came at every level. It came from the elementary school, it came from the middle school, and it came from the high school. And that would be to add a 0.4 music teacher. It would take a position that we have as 0.6 right now and be able to hire a 1.0, a full-time music teacher. The reason behind this is multifaceted. Number one, we have inequity at our elementary schools. At Monroe Elementary, if you're a student in band, you get band during the school day. If you are a student at Fawn Hollow or Stepney, if you want to do band, you have to get brought to school before school. So there's an issue there. This position would ameliorate that issue. It would give us flexibility at the middle school, especially at STEM, to provide some flexibility in their scheduling. But to me, and I'm sorry to my elementary and middle school friends, as a former high school principal, the biggest need, I think, is we want to be able to change the schedule at Massac High School. We have a block schedule. We're looking to modify that block schedule. We cannot do that without this position going in, because right now, the person doing this is a high school teacher who leaves the high school every day to go to the elementary schools. And if he has to keep doing that, we can't do any of that work at the high school. So this is a really important position for us. It's a small ask in terms of all the other asks. Talked about the technology infrastructure, the one-to-one program, 2 half-time IT folks in here. One was an inventory specialist. Paul, I'm sure can talk about this. We have our one-to-one program. Right now, we are, every student gets a Chromebook from 3rd grade to 8th grade. Next year, it'll be 3rd to 9th, and 3rd to 10th, 3rd to 11th, 3rd to 12th. We need somebody, it's a ton of work throughout the year to manage that program. And I probably after last week, don't have to talk about the cybersecurity. I know Terry's talking about cybersecurity quite a bit. So, and then our last, the last priority here was to replenish those maintenance accounts that I had talked about. Those were the, in 23-24, our emergency repairs line was at about $95,000. Last year, as part of our mitigation strategy, we dropped that to $20,000. This year, we had tried to up that back to 90 grand. So we tried to put some money back in there just to, help, deal with maintenance now instead of paying for it. All right, so that's where we are. Now I'll go through so that was kind of the presentation to the Board of Ed. That gives you a little bit of the rationale for the request that we had. Now I just want to share a little bit about our mitigation strategy that we've worked on over the past month. I shared with the Board of Education first last week. First, in order to get to that $1.85 million, we looked at the new positions, and as I said, all the new positions we would remove right now, with the exception of that 0.4 music teacher. I said we feel really strongly about that, and that has a lot of bang for the buck for what we're trying to do. So I don't need to go through all the positions. You see them all there. I mean, basically, all those would be eliminated. When we go into existing positions and programs, I know the first one, the word I use is abhorrent. It is the most difficult one. But we sat in a room and we had some really difficult conversations about things that would have to go to get us there to the 1.85 million. And the one I think that has created the most upset, not intentionally, it's just beyond this, it gets really difficult, was the elimination of 7th grade world language. I think there's been some questions. That 197,300 is the salary of 2 staff, not that one person. So that's those 2 people. And then you see the rest of the eliminations. But and we're still, questioning a little bit the 1st grade Monroe Elementary. Right now, our kindergarten population at Monroe is at 44. So it would be looking at class sizes of 22. We're also keeping a really close eye on kindergarten coming in this year. That number tends to fluctuate a lot, so it's tough. I know Kelly will tell you 1 year she had 39 and it went to 56, and last year she had 39 and it went to 44. So we're keeping a close eye on those 2 areas at Monroe Elementary. We would reduce a pre-K teacher, the teacher specifically, or the position specifically, not necessarily the teacher, because I have 2 people retiring there. So no one would necessarily lose a job, but the position that we would lose is a self-contained position. It's a kind of a room for students who are dysregulated, and 3 to 5-year-olds, especially with special needs, there's a pretty significant need for kids to go to for that. I want to be transparent again with the para-educator at Massac High School. It's actually the reduction of a program. We have a program at Massac that's run by a pretty skilled para-educator called the ACES program. It's a place for students to go. It's the best way I used to describe it when I was a high school principal was it's a structured study hall. It's a place for kids with executive functioning deficits to go, and the person is in constant contact with the teachers, works on the students, getting them organized, getting their work together, getting their homework in, getting all that stuff together. So it would really be the elimination of that program, and so that position would go go away. We have a literacy lab at the high school that would, that's a non-certified position. It's a place for students to go to get support with, any kind of English language arts assignments that they have. We have a summer reading program at the elementary level. Each of the elementary schools are allocated funds for the summer reading program to help students that specifically struggle reading to kind of avoid that summer slide. And then finally, the last thing is, and I kind of grouped it into one big lump here, is stipends to the tune of about $60,600. Some of that we identified, I think it was about $12,000 in stipends that were unused this year. So why would we go ahead and continue to, why are we going to put that in the budget? So we removed that, but it also includes some other pretty significant stipends. We have technology integrators, and about half of that is, the technology integrator stipend, which we have at every school to help teachers with, technology integration, artificial intelligence, and some of that work. In terms of facilities, again, we would look at cutting that line back like we did this year. I put an asterisk next to it because what we did this year was we said, hey, we're going to cut it to $20,000. We have our revenue, our facilities revenue line that we get from rentals. If we exceed that number and we can't cover it somewhere else in the budget, we'll cover it with that revenue fund. You'll see in the next few slides, really talk of some revenue lines and some other areas that obviously are not as impactful. The next two go together: reduce supplies and reduce summer help. In the summertime, we get a lot of high school kids that come and help. They help at IT. They help with in maintenance. And every year, as soon as the summer starts, they go into every classroom. They literally pull every single piece of furniture out of the classrooms. Everything is in the hallways. If you walk through any of our hallways at the end of June, you'll see every teacher's desk, bookcase, file cabinet, everything in the hallway. That then allows the custodians to go in, strip the floors, wash the floors, and then re-wax all the floors. What we would do this year is we would not provide that same level of service. We'll go into the rooms, we'll move everything to one side, wash the floor, move everything to the other side, wash floors, and be done with it. We'll still wash, strip, and wax the hallways and the bigger areas like the cafeterias, but by doing that, we could cut way down supplies and summer help. And then the last one is lawn maintenance. We have a contract, I think it's somewhere in the vicinity of 32 grand or so, for a vendor that goes around and cuts our grass and does some yard lawn maintenance around the district, with the exception of Massac. Massac does their own lawn maintenance. This would be pulling that Massac crew around the district to cut the grass, on those days. So it's gonna run Massac a little thin on those days. And it's not a full, we don't capture the full $32,000 because yes, we'll be taking the work in-house, but we've got to pay for fuel, we've got to pay for our equipment if it breaks and stuff like that. So we kind of came up with a figure there of about $20,000 savings. A few true ups here, or actually one true up here is the gate receipts Ron went through. Again, we got kind of nitty gritty. We're talking about small numbers here. We got $1.85 million, but we went through everything. Ron identified that gate receipts trended a little bit higher than when we budgeted in October, so we put 6,000 back in. In this budget, we budgeted to provide the ice hockey team with $7,800 towards ice time. Every student athlete at Massac that plays a sport pays a surcharge of $300 with the exception of ice hockey. Ice hockey does not pay a surcharge. They pay for ice time. So it usually runs generally between about $1,900 and $2,300 to play ice hockey. What we were trying to do here, just to kind of, and the cost of ice time is getting exorbitantly high, like the cost of everything, I guess. What we're trying to do here is allocate approximately $300 to each of those student athletes on the ice hockey team to defray the cost of the ice time.
That's per family,
What's that?
the 1,900 or 2,300?
It's about per family.
Per
Yeah.
family,
Yeah, I
okay,
don't know what it was this year about that.
It was about that.
Yeah.
okay.
The next one is middle school transportation. This one is, this is kind of out of necessity. Our middle school athletic program for since COVID, we've been very fortunate with our bus company getting kids to and from school. I hear nightmare stories in other districts, but they have not been able to provide athletic, the after-school buses, the activity buses for sports to the same level that they were before the pandemic. And that's at both the middle school and the high school, but it's especially felt at the middle school. So for a lot of sports, primarily basketball and girls and boys and baseball and softball, we've had to rely on parents to drive the kids to games the past couple of years. So we just can't get the buses anyway. So we decided, to make a cut there. $10,000 in professional development. And then Steve came up with, I just wrote a couple things there. Steve went through his supply lines and looked at, $40,600 in testing, services, textbooks, equipment, and a whole host of other things. I just kind of grouped them there. And then really the big pickup is right here. There are pickups in places. Ron, I know Mike is probably sick of hearing me say it, but Ron always tells me, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And, we get more information as the process unfolds here. So there's some, things here that, that we've learned over time that we want to be able to apply to the budget. So, when we look at, we want to be able to apply some special revenue that we have. I'm nervous about this, but listen, it's a tough time. So we're looking at we do take in tuition for pre-K. We also have a daycare program that's geared towards staff and town employees. We're looking at using revenue from those programs to help offset the Steve.
So if you were not needing to use this to offset the reduction, what would you have been using this for? I mean, you're getting this income.
Yeah.
What do you use it for?
Yeah,
The
the daycare has built up. A lot of times the money is used for daycare expenses. But one of my things is we use a lot of our own resources to support that. So to me, it's kind of unrestricted funds. If we have some smaller capital things that we want to take care of and things of that nature, we're at a point right now. This is really one of the first times we'll ever be hitting it. But we would do that. The pre-K money, I know you've used to help pay for Tara's in the past. Definitely supplies. A ton of supplies.
So if we put it toward making up this deficit from the reduction, what's at risk, or what can't you do next year because you won't have that same balance? You don't.
I don't know if you want to speak about the pre-K because the daycare, I don't think the daycare is as much of a risk because we have a good balance in there. And the reason why we have the balance in there is if we ever have to dissolve the daycare, we're going to have to pay people out in unemployment. So we want to make sure we keep that there. We would still have enough to cover that if we did that.
I mean, the only expenditures that come out of the daycare right now are the salaries and any supplies that come out of the daycare.
Okay.
And there is a fund balance there. So this isn't something that could necessarily be done every year to that level.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's sort of where I'm going.
Yes,
But
exactly.
if we have traditionally used it for various odds and ends, what's the chance of those odds and ends, paying for a pair or doing something like that being needed next year? Thereafter.
I mean, it's discussion with me, but it's a nervous thing to use this because we do have students who do pay tuition, but it just depends on how many neighborhood students we get. We hope to always have 50-50 ratio in preschool, but we don't always have that. Usually in October, but from then on, it's risky because we just don't know that number's going.
And we use those funds to put back into preschool, and preschool is a moving target, right? Because we're enrolling students all throughout the year. And so we might have a new student enroll who has special needs, who needs certain things, and we want to get supplies for that student, and that's the funds that it comes from. So.
That's where it comes from. Okay, thank you.
The next one is again, this is where, it's a marathon. And, when we put the budget together, we budgeted so much for insurance, got a little relief, not nearly as much relief as we got last year, not even close. So we have about a $250,000 pickup between that and rolling off some of those positions. So that is also included in that 250. If we take away some of those proposed positions, when we put those positions in, we also put the insurance in. So rolling them back off there as well. We have a pickup of about $250,000 in insurance. The pension payment was updated when Ron, we budgeted and Ron put his best guess in at that time. We've gotten, updated numbers there. So we have about a $32,000 pickup in the pension. Chromebooks. Paul budgeted $150,000 for Chromebooks. Last year we budgeted $150,000. Next year we were budgeting $150,000, and that's because we're doing that one-to-one program. We're giving, we provide Chromebooks now at 2 places, 3rd grade and 8th grade. So what we decided to do is, as an administrative team, we talked about, let's freeze our spending right now, save as much money as we can. So instead of cutting $75,000 out of Chromebooks, let's try to buy it out of supplies this year. So it's going to be less supplies they can buy this year, but if we can pre-purchase those Chromebooks, we'll cut $75,000 out of next year's budget and, get the other $75,000 that we had in there, the balance of the 150. And then finally is the retirement. When we negotiated our contract with the teachers union, it used to be that if they retired and they have the choice of getting their retirement payout for those who are eligible for it. They used to be able to get it in either July or January. And when we renegotiated the contract, we said, can it be in June? Does it matter? It doesn't matter to them because the fiscal year is the fiscal year for tax purposes.
You're talking one payroll away from.
Exactly. So, but that would allow us to use funds this year to do that. Ron has been, monitoring all of our accounts. He feels pretty confident that, we can, we'd be able to pay about $250,000 of that obligation with this year's money. So we've come up with that.
So can I just ask you on
Sure.
that, or ask Ron?
Yeah.
Where's the budget looking? Where's your projection right now for where you're gonna end the year?
So right now, insurance is tracking well. Board of Ed.
Board of Ed insurance, yes.
Utilities, specifically electric, on both sides is not tracking well, okay? So there is some offset there. And look, I'm working with we're doing the calculation on the town side and the Board of Ed side. Unfortunately, on the Board of Ed side, Massac High School probably square footage wise and, is as big as every town building put together. So the model we used to build the current year budget didn't capture some of the pure rate increases that took effect that we're all aware of, which actually look like they're rolling off this April. So this year, I'm not through with the calculation, but it's going to be between 150 to 200,000 that we're going to go over on and specifically, and I'm going to pick Fawn Hollow because Fawn Hollow's heat is electric heat. And we had a very cold winter, so the building was kept, the heat was kept up through the evening hours. So we blew the budget bad at Fawn, and there's really
You have no choice.
So going forward, projecting that into next year, those rate increases, I believe, roll off in April. We just don't know where they're going to go come April. So I know there's a lot there, but there's a lot of unknowns, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So either late next week or early the following week, will be myself and Mr. Nowacki will be. We haven't had a chance yet to talk to the first selectman, but we're going to be
Are you gonna
putting
have,
something together regarding the electric.
so you'll have something for us to consider before we
Yes.
have to get this budget out the
Yes.
door?
Yes.
Yeah, we learned the hard way for me. We were over there one day and there was a pond in one of those classrooms because the plumbing is
Exterior wall.
yeah, it's an exterior wall. And we had a really cold February and we had a pipe burst and then so they kept the heat on, where they would normally turn it down bit more at night in February. They had to keep it on to make sure we didn't have that same problem. Last year I came to you with a very similar list, just to give you an idea of kind of where we are. I kind of did this last year with red, yellow, and green, with green being, the areas that we're more comfortable with, with having, if we have to live without it. Obviously, some of those things that we talked about, like gate receipts, the Chromebooks, we have a plan there, using the revenue, but being cognizant of the fact that, like a lot of things, like using fund balance, it's a one-time hit. The updated pension, the insurance updates, and prepaying retirement, we're pretty comfortable with that stuff. Got a little bit less comfortable with the stuff in the yellow, but if we prioritize things, number one on top of the list would be, getting the 7th grade world language back. And then, all those items in red, I don't want to necessarily go through them all, because a lot of them are things that we've already talked about. Again, we are a habit in red, but we are keeping a close eye on that Monroe Elementary, those kindergarten numbers, because if that's an area that technically had to move to the yellow, we probably could have that to probably, flip flop that, and I could have made that orange, I guess, between the red and the yellow. Just depending on numbers. And you can see what we have there in the in yellow, the prioritization list.
What is
Yeah.
What's the threshold for class size when a teacher begins to need an aide in their classroom?
There's no real numbers, so to speak, but it really depends
Is
on,
there a contractual one? Yeah.
that's our contractual class size, is not when you need them.
And it's
not necessarily when you need them.
recommended
Yeah.
class sizes in
Yeah.
the contract.
Yeah, but once you start getting, once
I
you start
start
getting
thinking
up,
about that, we
yeah.
cut a teacher, and then all of a sudden, the teachers don't have the time, the resources to devote to every student that they want to.
Yeah.
We're gonna be hiring somebody else
Yeah.
on the back end. And,
And-
I'm sure it'll be great, but it's not the same as having another teacher,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, it really depends on, the level, it depends on, the age of, the age of the students. It depends on the needs in the classroom. We have, I know right now, like
Preschool
kindergarten class
high
has a pretty
need.
small group, but it's 25% of them are special education. So probably have, needs in both those classes.
Literally at any level,
Mhm.
it depends on the need of the student, right? So if the student is identified with special education needs, they may need a parent educator just for themselves, right? So it's hard to just say it's just for class size, but it's really more for the needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have a very easy, straightforward class, or it's more, keeps your days more exciting.
So Joe, let me take a run through
Sure.
what you're saying. Tell me if I'm understanding you correctly.
Mhm.
The things you would want back in a priority would be the things in red.
Right.
Okay. And I'll just leave those as a block for now. I may come back and ask you within those, what's the priority? In terms of the yellow, you're more comfortable with that, with those reductions or eliminations. What's the sequence of priority?
I'll tell you, the only area that I keep wavering with, I put these in sequential order.
Okay,
So it's prioritized there. The only thing is that first grade at Monroe Elementary, I could possibly move that down based on, where we end up with students. Like I said, it's 20, there's 44 kids, it would be 22 in a first grade class, but it's also a group that has a little bit more special needs than another.
Okay. Problem that I see is that we've got a month-ish, not even, to do our work.
Mhm.
How much more information are you going to have about next year's enrollment in that time period? Right, so that's where I think
Yeah.
there's an exposure.
Mhm.
And I see everybody shaking their head, okay. And so the yellow is in sequential order in terms of top to bottom, what you would want to
Yes,
restore first.
yes.
Okay,
And, as we look at this too, you'll see, in some of our things, restoring, proposed positions even over some existing positions, just based on the changing needs of the district.
right.
It's like you see,
what's-
assistant
it's
principal was
what's
something we
driving
didn't have before, but it's at the top of the yellow list.
And, Yeah, obviously, I said that, I go to a lot of the Board of Ed meetings, so I've heard the discussion about from the principals and so forth, so, and I know the issue that was dealt with last year.
Yeah.
And has been proven to be beneficial based on what, what I've heard publicly, so, okay.
That's all I have for that portion. I don't know if anyone has any questions on this. I also thank Ron, Jen, and Mike, Sheila, for helping me. I took a crack at the questions. I know we got them yesterday. I hope I didn't mischaracterize any of them. I may have. If you want to talk about this, or if you want to talk about, I know you folks had questions. There's some of them, I don't know if if I'm off the mark, let us know. We'll go back and get you the right answers. And some of this stuff was for Ron as well. So it's actually your meeting.
Yeah. So
Questions.
just for everyone on the board, these were the questions that were emailed that I compiled and submitted to Ron for answers. And so it looks like very nicely, they took the question and then put the answer in red. So thank you very much.
So,
She did.
in the only questions we addressed at this point were, I think there might be some town questions that were
There were.
answered in there, like the mill rate, but most of the town questions at this point for this meeting are not.
Okay.
The focus was on the DOE questions.
Yeah.
The other one, I just want to make sure people, because number 8, they talked about receive feedback regarding the elimination of grade 7, I think it's world language.
Mhm.
With the justification that it be not mandated by the state of Connecticut, can you share details about courses or programs that go beyond requirements? I just want to explain it. The question's not as cut and dry as it seems. It's just the way it is. Basically, the Connecticut Constitution says that every student in Connecticut has to be given a free and appropriate public education, elementary and secondary. There are the Connecticut general statutes kind of outline what that program of instruction should look like. At really the elementary and middle school level, they don't delineate out like you need, X amount of this or X amount. I think PE is one of the ones that they say you have to have 20 minutes of PE a day, but they don't say how much English language arts or how much math. They don't even really address it. There's
Okay.
obviously state standards that we have to meet. The only thing where it really hits that is when you get to the high school and you get to the graduation requirements. So even in there, we offer classes at Massac that aren't necessarily required, but you have to meet so many credits to graduate. Some of those include electives. So, while woodshop may not be required, it could be one of the electives that XU takes, or culinary arts, or music or art or anything like that. So it wasn't as simple as that. I asked the principals for some help. We put some information there. I hope it answers the question. I just felt like I didn't know if I was addressing it the way you wanted, the way it was meant to be asked.
Okay. Yeah, if there's any follow-ups, we'll email those into too. Okay.
So, Joe, I will forward to Rebecca a question. I went back and pulled the last 5 years of yours and your predecessors' budget presentations. And I was focusing on salaries and benefits that, and again, it's from your initial presentation each year. And I was trying to look at just how salaries and benefits in real dollars, account for the increases that we're seeing each year. And my concern is that we've got a fixed, whatever it is, we've got a fixed amount based on contracts that we have to deal with. And I don't think there's good visibility to it, number one. And number two, the presentation that is done in December by you to the board, the benefits, especially the insurance, always changes. Last year started high and it came down significantly. Other years, not so much. This year, 250,000. And so my ultimate question is going to be to not just look at what was presented in December, but what turned out to be the actual, what turned out to be the actual and how much do they vary? Because I'm really trying to get a view going forward, because last year there was, based on the presentation, salary and benefits needed almost $4 million. Again, we know insurance came down. And so we don't really have a good view. So I don't think there's a good view of what will it be next year if we kept the same staff that you had today, or because I'm just concerned that we have to deal with or have to recognize that fixed cost. And I'm just trying to get to a better picture of it. So I'll send you what I have, and now that I've spoken, you have some idea of what the question, I'll send it to Rebecca and she'll send it on.
And to piggyback off of what you're saying, one of the questions that I had asked that you guys responded to, thank you very much, regarding, the increases compared to from like in the 25 budget versus the 26 budget, broke down by educator, administrator, and support staff, pretty broad categories, but we'll start there. These increases, roughly 3-ish%, anywhere from 2.5% to 3% year over year, and that does include the new positions. So we're not talking about, giving 30% raises to all these teachers. We're really, it's less than 3% overall, because we have the new positions included in this 26 presentation here. So we don't have it broken down yet, Steve, but we do have like that knowledge that we're not talking about these contractual increases being that hefty, right?
And all the collective bargaining agreements are on the board's website,
Mhm.
and on the town side, the same thing.
Mhm.
So you can get
Yeah,
more
it's
detail
public.
there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, the rates are, I'm not sure that I did. What I would be missing is what's the staff? I mean, what's the, what's the makeup of, what's underneath the number that you present? And that's why I figured you all have it, rather than me even trying to go through a budget book and making sure that I hit every correct salary line. It's just a concern. The other thing that I just wanted to point out is I went back quickly to last year and was looking at the adjustments that were made. So from the budget that the superintendent requested, the Board of Ed requested last year, 1,187,000 was removed by the first selectman, and the Board of Finance put back 126,000. So again, I know that insurance was a big part of that savings.
I think it was like 740.
Yeah, so out of the million reduction that was left out of that calculation, yes, something north of $500,000 was in it. And so my concern as we get into the budget is, how do we deal with this year over year? We can't, my position is we can't keep reducing. We're never going to get out of this problem by trying to reduce and cut individual programs.
If I can interject, just one thing you're forgetting, Steve, in that exercise, the Board of Education did return $1.2 million last year. I just want to make that a point because that's one factor that you're
Absolutely.
forgetting.
No, I haven't forgotten.
Well, that's a big factor.
So is the point you're making, that you're anticipating them having $1.2 million of savings?
No, last year we knew.
But we know last year we had
Last year we
$1.2
knew
million
it was
of
coming in.
savings.
Yeah.
So we're thinking there's probably gonna be another 1.2 million.
No.
There's gonna be something.
We
What
knew the
you're
medical,
thinking?
we knew the medical was gonna turn lower, because we were negotiating with the states. We knew those were small numbers. And then ultimately that was during the budget cycle.
Yeah.
So we were able to make up that difference, that original cut through that. But then the Board of Ed actually had a 1.2 overage, which came back, and we did fund some things up.
That's right.
I think we used about $500,000
I think we used more than that.
to put back in the Board of Ed for,
Yeah.
one was the state mandated reading
Reading
program for $302,000.
Some more went into the special ed
250
reserve
reserve
fund.
fund.
We put special ed reserve.
I just wanted to bring that up, Steve, because that's the whole story.
Right.
I have a quick question, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding this triage list. Let's just say of all of the items in the red category, 597, 591. We would then have to look at the green category and say that the insurance, that 250 would be a different number at the end of the day. The prepayment retirement would be a different number at the end of the day. The pension would be different.
No,
Is that correct?
no,
Okay.
no. So these three, correct me if I'm wrong, but these three numbers actually, I'm sorry, these three totals here come up to, it's actually more than the $1.85 million.
1.999.
And the reason for that is we also included the overage that we're going to experience with utilities. So we had to account for that in there. So no, this is just saying if you return 597, 591, those things in red would get reinstated.
Right, and then we would have to, part of that 597, that would increase because we're paying for insurance, pension, right?
Yo, good point. Yes, yeah, you would
Okay.
probably have not pension, but
But the green items would change.
You would have you're right. The insurance would probably be. I can't think of anything else besides insurance that would change here. No, just insurance. Insurance would probably go up here. Because to my point before, it's a good point that you brought up. This insurance was savings and, it being 11% instead of 12%, but also taking out some of the people that we eliminated from, that we had proposed to go in, which are in the red. So you're right.
So if we
Okay.
put
Insurance
people
would probably
back,
go up.
the insurance savings goes down.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
So that's probably more like,
Yeah,
So if you added a position back,
Mhm.
That's
the
right.
insurance would.
yeah, so what percentage do you say? It's like what,
change.
another like, what's your rate about? Like, it's like, to be another 11%
So,
for that
you know, and
position?
again, we're projecting on a new, it's a new body, right? So what are they gonna take, you
Mhm, yeah.
know?
We're gonna hire
So
someone
what's the
at
always
26 and we're still on their
variable?
parents.
You know, if
But you're like,
yeah,
of course,
you know.
but like in your budget, you have like an estimate for, on average, about how much you're projecting for each FTE, right? So
Yeah,
it's like
usually
8%
over
or
the,
12
if, depending on, if I've got 5 or 6 new hires, I'll look at, assuming they're gonna come in at a +1 as
Gotcha.
opposed to a family.
Mhm.
Some may come in as single,
Mhm.
some may still be on their parents if you get lucky. But you also have to put a contingency in there for changes during the year. You got the teacher who gets married and has a kid and goes from single to family. You've got to be able to,
So
And-
on average, it's like another 8%. Like when you go and like do your math over time, you're like, oh, it's approximately, benefits are X% of, if you're going to do it by, like, I'm horrible at this. If you were gonna figure it out by FTE, cost per FTE or
Yeah, so
that.
what I do to budget, I take the census that
Mhm.
we have right now
Mhm.
and by bargaining unit, by, who's carrying what insurance.
Mhm.
And then I kind of just extrapolate, okay, you get new, you've got these people rolling off, retirements, you look to see where they are,
Yeah.
whether they're taking family, compare these positions that are gonna have to be replaced.
Mhm.
What's the likelihood you're gonna get a 25-year-old teacher versus, somebody who's, and you're just,
Mhm.
you're making best guess estimates, really.
Mhm. And we also have some retirees that are probably coming off as
Yes.
well, so maybe
Yes.
there's a little bit of an offset there, so maybe the
Yeah, except a
reduction.
couple of the retirees weren't taking insurance. But also- Okay, we do look at all those,
Yeah,
variables.
Okay.
And there's a lot of variables. So.
The one thing for the board members, so the question was asked, they gave a priority list, but at the end of the day, we're only providing the number. So it is up to the superintendent and the Board of Ed to vote on what they do. We do not have any say.
We have no control over it, but the good news is, as former chair of this body has pointed out, the working relationship between us and the board and the superintendent have greatly improved over the years. And one of the things that I now take to the bank is that while I completely understand that we could restore X number of dollars and the Board of Ed could turn around and say, no, we don't, we don't want to restore world language. We want to do something else. That is their prerogative, but the way it's been working between the two bodies, again, we have no legal authority to tell them what to do. But I trust that if they've put this before us and we agree that based on working together,
Right.
that this is what the superintendent will recommend, and I'm assuming that his board, the board independently would do that.
Right. All right, thanks, Steve. So I guess from the Q&A standpoint, this is a lot of info to go through. So I'm not sure if we want to do that here and go through each question and have discussion, or if we want to do that.
I mean, we can't, I mean, I'm fine doing it, in case we have questions of the superintendent or his staff.
While they're here.
While they're here, because I certainly want to read through it. I mean, I took a quick look at number 7, which is a question that I had asked about the non-lapsing fund that has existed for a number of years. The law changed a year ago. And I know that Joe came and spoke or commented during one of our meetings last year that based again on our working relationship, he felt that there was nothing for them to take action to put it in that fund without our say so. That is what the law allows the board to do. And so I was interested in the value that was in that, again, as a way to maybe offset some of these reductions. So that would be a question that at some point I would come back to Joe or to the board with. It's not a lot of money, it's $18,000, but if we're trying to close the hole, would you feel comfortable in it's got to be your decision or the board's decision, but that's a source of some funds.
Yeah, and I think, I do appreciate the relationship and, I think it is important. Try to be as transparent. I think one of the nicest things we have going on is Ron, quite frankly. It's nice that he sees he kind of knows what's going on. And we talked a lot about the 10248A, the non-lapsing account. And I know there's other districts that do it. And I told my folks, I said, I think the second we do that, we start to create distrust amongst us. And we've had a pretty, when we came to you guys at the end of last year, like the first selectman said, and asked for money for the reading program, money to put in the contingency account, and money for the 100-year flood and everything else. There's did that. So I don't rely on that account for anything. I think there was money put in there. I think initially it was supposed to be, to help replace the carpet on the field. And, I think the decision was made a few years ago.
We'll bond for that when that comes up. Which is when? It's a few years from now, right?
Probably a couple years away. I think we got an extra year out of it because of COVID.
Okay.
I think it's, it was in your capital project.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
It is.
Yeah, right, so just
26, 27.
And again, that would involve redoing not only the turf, but the track
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, the whole facility.
Mhm.
Want to just go down the questions, or how do you want to do it? Do you want?
Yeah.
Do you want Joe to present it, or Ron?
Do you have a preference?
We could just go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll start because question 1 had to do with, do you want me to read the question or?
Sure, because it's public.
Sure. So Terry quoted an increase in medical insurance for the BOE of $791,000, an 8.1% increase in his budget presentation. However, the Board of Education budget showed $2 million. Steve is also referring to change.
Yeah.
Steve is also referring to a change to increase to the.
That was when the
11
insurance
because,
rate
yeah, the
came in.
insurance,
Yeah.
Just throw a
that was
little
based on.
info around.
These differences.
Yeah.
It sounds like a SBAC question.
So Terry's presentation,
Try.
you want to answer that? Okay.
So last year, United Healthcare, we know, came at us with a very large increase. I think it was in the area of 28%. So obviously we went to market after a vigorous kind of conversation with them. We decided to go to the state plan, and because the state plan was at 9%, I think it was 7%. We had to pay 2% because we weren't involved in the previous year, something along those lines. It was conveyed to us at that point in time that the state was going to look at 2 to 4% increases over the 3 years. This is a 3-year agreement. That didn't happen. So my original projection of X ended up being Y, and that's why that question was stated that way. That 8.1% increase represents the expense that we did not predict based on what was conveyed to us from the state.
Gotcha.
So that 791 is a piece of the overall.
Overall.
It was the
Gotcha.
big that we paid more than we thought,
Okay, gotcha.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I'll read the next one. Yeah, is that good? Okay, so the salary increases for existing Board of Ed positions. What is the percent increase for these wages compared to prior year? What was the percent increase from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25? It would be great if we could get that breakdown by educator versus administrator versus support staff, but I understand if that isn't doable before our meeting. In case I failed at explaining this, here's the table I'm imagining.
I literally put a table. Yikes. So that's another.
Sam, this was one of yours.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
So one of the things, if you look at, section 2 of our budget, it says budget summary by object, it gives it to you by each, even within the bargaining group, sometimes it's broken out, but, so we kind of gave it our best shot here, because when you look at support staff, you're talking about, really, we have collective bargaining agreements with the custodians, another collective bargaining agreement with the secretaries, another collective bargaining with the nurses, with the paraeducators, with the librarians, and then we have all of our non-affiliated staff that don't have it. So it was hard to kind of break that. That's why it says like the percent increase, because on the low end, those increases were 1.5%, on the high end, it was 2.5%, for the support staff. If you look at each of the other ones we just looked at, what were the contractual increases those years based on the previous negotiations. So that's where we got the 2.9 and 3% and the 3% and the 2.75%. It's just important to know that these include the new positions. So the increases like from 24 to 25 included any new positions that we had. Again, the 26 numbers include those new positions. Also wanted to point out for the fiscal year 25, you see a big increase in the administrators line there to 538,103. That was the addition of the assistant principal, but it was also, we had the the elementary instructional leaders had been being paid through an RPESA grant prior to that. So they rolled on the grant. That's why there's such an increase there. And previous to that, they were in the teacher's bargaining unit. We moved them out of the teacher's bargaining unit for $17,000 to get 10 more days out of them, plus a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
And this includes like the step changes as well, right?
So
Step and-
in the dollar increase, yes, the percentage increase is just the GWI.
Just the-
It does not
okay.
include, like in the teacher's bargaining unit, there's 15 plus steps.
Right, okay.
So it does not include the step increases.
So in the budget before us, does the board have open,
Yes.
contract negotiations underway
Yes.
or that would hit retroactive to this upcoming July?
Yes, so it's captured, I don't know if you got that. It is captured in wage adjustment.
Okay, so it's all in the wage adjustment. Okay. And what bargaining units?
Nurses.
Paras, custodian, and nurses. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next one, the overages for Board of Ed salaries, retirements, and sped tuition excess costs are all contractual mandated obligations of some kind. The total of these costs exceed the increase that Terry is proposing, but I don't see how we can avoid adding these to the budget. Am I missing something here, or is there another avenue for funding these costs?
And
We're
really,
trying to see how
I hope I
long-
captured this correctly.
Yeah.
I talked about there with the revenue funds, also grant funds as well. You see later on, we talk about, using especially IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, for special education staff, and Title I to fund some salaries as well.
Okay. The next one, assuming the 1.85 reduction by the first select is added back into the budget passed by the town council, what would be the projected mill rate? And the answer was 29.19. Who calculated that? You did?
Heidi did.
Oh, good. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi. You confirm what I did myself. That time on it, I didn't want to say anything till
So a 2%
official.
increase.
Yeah.
Over.
Whatever it is, it's 26 lots, so it would be 29.
Yeah, so, yeah.
No, I mean,
That would
like,
be
I mean,
on
the
top.
percentage in, at the
Yeah.
percent.
Yeah, then,
I'm talking about.
again, that was if the whole thing was added back and
But that would be on top of the rebalance back as well.
That's
I mean,
right.
the rebound impact is
Yeah,
huge.
well,
That's what's.
I mean, the shift.
yeah, it's take the bottom line in the budget that's out there. People wanted things restored, this gives them a number to utilize.
Catherine just said it best, actually. It's the shift from commercial to
To
residential.
residential,
Really
right.
hurts.
Everybody's piece of the pie just gets
If
rebalanced.
commercial had performed close to residential, it would be,
Mhm.
that's the biggest concern.
Mhm.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, the next question. I understand that the insurance increase percentage is now 11% with this new value. We know. So what is the savings on the Board of Ed side? It's 250. What's the savings on the town side? Is that?
So we're working through the numbers on that. and
Okay.
There's gonna be some other adjustments on the town side. We've got people retiring. We've got some of those family situations changing.
Okay,
So the net on the town side may actually be a bit of an increase. That's the way
okay.
it's
So
looking.
towns
Ooh.
TBD.
Is that a good way to phrase that, Heidi?
That's not what I
I
expected.
feel like it's gonna be
Not-
a not
yeah,
savings.
so-
be an increase.
Okay, I mean.
Since the budget was prepared, we've a couple of police officers retiring. We've got some
Okay.
families being expanded.
Okay,
Mhm.
So
Okay.
just dealing with the reality.
Well, that's the reason, that was the
Yeah,
reason for the
so-
question. I just want to know what the reality
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and
We'll
you'll have that for us
we'll have that for you next week.
in a few weeks.
All right, so the current balance of the Board of Finance established fund to backstop sped, that was 1.25.
Okay,
That was, recently, we just added the
yeah, we've been
additional
adding,
$250,000.
yeah, for over a number of years, so that's a.
Okay, so a number of years ago, the Board of Finance established a fund under CGS 10248A to hold money returned to the town and Board of Ed. And the Board of Finance allowed the Board of Ed to put money into the non-lapsing fund. How much money is currently in that fund? So we know it's $18,561. Don't forget the 45
Sense,
cents.
yeah, that could make or break us.
Does that earn interest? Is that with?
Well,
Frank?
so that's in a fund. It's not, the cash isn't actually segregated. The accounting
Okay.
for it is segregated.
Oh, okay,
So it's
gotcha.
earning.
So it's
you know,
earning with the.
Frank is earning.
It's only
Okay.
what, yeah, Frank's got it invested. Thank you very much.
I know we,
And remember, it's the
Yeah.
45 cents that's gonna make
I
the
was just
difference.
gonna say that.
just as an ex officio member of the Board of Finance, I just want
Yeah.
to go back really quick.
Sure.
What is the current balance in Board of Finance established fund to back up sped needs of the school system? $1,250,000. When's the last time that was used?
It was, hasn't been
hasn't been.
used.
It has never been used. When did we start doing that? Obviously, it's before my time, but when did we actually start?
It was probably 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's 4 years. I think it was probably 4 years.
We
ago.
started with $500,000, we contributed another half, and then we just contributed $250,000. So
Yeah,
it's
what I'm
been,
just doing
Because I
here
was
is
on
just
the
trying, and for the people listening, what I'm trying to do is just reveal a contingency of 1.2, and that's, it's taxpayer dollars that are being held up for 3 years that we haven't used. I understand the concern there.
right,
Because as we go into bonding, they like to see any money put aside in contingency for shortfall, so we certainly want to keep a bond rating. But I just want to reveal that hasn't been used in 3 years, and that's a $1.2 million contingency of taxpayers' money that's sitting, so.
Yeah.
Obviously, I understand the concerns of a student can't come in and there is cost, and I know it's dangerous territory to a degree, but I just want to reveal for 3 years it's been there, we haven't.
Yeah, good
used it.
point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's also money that's being invested.
And that's being,
Yes.
yeah.
It's not in a separate, it's not in a separate bank.
And this year, we were fortunate because when the excess cost grant originally came in for special education, it was coming in at 60%. The state legislature and the governor just passed to, add an additional 40 million to this current year. So now it's at now we'll get reimbursed at about 73%, which is a little bit above where.
We're picking up a couple
Yes.
100,000, right?
Yes.
Is it-
I'm sorry. It's
Because
a
of
couple hundred. but yes,
100,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was the.
Our share of the 40,
Yeah.
our share.
205,000 extra, right?
I'm sorry, say
We're
that.
getting an extra $205,000.
205, thank you.
Okay. And is that is always changing, Jen?
It's always
Yes.
changed, but historically, we used to get 70%.
Right.
And we haven't been getting that in the past couple of years. So if before we got some extra money this year, it would have been around 60%.
Okay,
And it did go up to 72.8, but that extra money was because that $40 million that Joe was talking about, that additional $40 million that was approved to the state.
So
okay.
$40 million to the state.
Yeah, excluding the 40 million, excluding the 200,000, we had a reimbursement rate of 60%
Yes.
this year now because we know what our numbers are. We've gotten the first payment and you do one more payment.
Right, we've gotten the first payment and we got $721,000. We're gonna get about a little over 400,000.
Okay.
I want to take a step back real quick. Terry, something you said earlier about the 1.25 million of taxpayer dollars not being used for that fund. Are there other areas that you've examined where we've kind of put things in the budget? These were real dollars that are set aside, but things that we've budgeted for that we're using to base our mill rate on that have never been used. Is that an analysis we've also done in other areas to
On the
kind of
town
see?
side, of course.
So is that, sorry. I know
We've
this is
actually
important.
gotten even more creative and used, grant money to do certain things that we have. But yeah, no, not on the town side. We don't have any extreme contingencies. We do have some because
Oh, yeah.
obviously town, the electrical will maybe next year we'll have a contingency for that because when you have shortfalls. But
So we have.
we don't on the town side, because I can only speak on the town side.
Yeah, of
And the only
course.
reason I
And
mention that
that's
is because that came up as a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the town side, we don't have really any areas of super strong unpredictability. I guess that would be, the special
Well, that's not
education
really
is a
the
very
Yeah.
unpredictable
We have it one,
part of a budget. We don't have something, I don't believe we have anything. along
nothing that
those
big. I know we've got the
No,
Board of
nothing
Finance
that-
one that's mandated by our town charter.
Nothing that would have a
Yeah.
high unpredicted impact other than, well, maybe storms, right? Maybe floods, maybe.
Well, hopefully,
that's-
it's once in 100 years, right, guys?
But we also have for that, we have a disaster fund of $500,000 that we use, so
Right.
our contingencies aren't that big. That's probably one of our biggest ones, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly snow, health,
Snow.
insurance, but what
Well, yeah, there's always gonna
changes
be
could
budget
happen.
misses. That's like totally.
The
there's
other thing is
unpredictability, of
a big
course.
capital expenditure if a boiler goes somewhere,
But I think I was more thinking
But then we
about,
come to
Mhm.
that's what the fund balance ultimately is for.
Right.
And we would, be going before.
And that's also another thing too, in regards to, when I was on council in regard to Board of Education. There were times, Joe, and you were there when I was on council, where Board of Education needed money and went to council and Board of Finance, and you approved that, and they've always been very generous with those asks. I've never been in a council meeting or a Board of Finance meeting where they didn't finance it relatively easily and unanimously. So that's always an option with these budgets. If you have a shortfall, you can always go to council. You can always go to the Board of Finance. And in my history, I've seen a shortfall. I think we had a shortfall years ago around 600,000 or something like that. I think maybe 1 year or so. And we support it,
Yeah.
because obviously we need to take care of our kids. But that is also an option that a lot of people don't really understand, that if somehow we do run into a shortfall, there's the option to come to council and Board of Finance and say, this is what we need. And we're running a very strong fiscally strong town, so we do have the fortunate ability to use an undesignated fund balance that still stays over what we need to maintain a AAA bond rating, so.
yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I think I was more looking at not just like contingency funds on the town side, but more like if we have open positions or programs that we budgeted for that never get used, that's something that is funded by taxpayer
we don't,
dollars. So that might be something interesting to look at as well, to see what
yeah, we
that
do it on
looks
a,
like.
we don't
you know?
have any of that on the town side, really.
So like no open positions that
No.
we funded?
They do open up, but I filled most of them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think we might have one open position in town.
I'm not sure.
Carol's
Yeah,
position.
Yeah, I've seen like
Yeah.
definitely the open positions have declined a lot in
Oh,
this
yeah.
last, in this last cycle. It's just something to kind of think about, like, are there things like that sitting elsewhere that we can kind
Nothing.
of look at? That's
Yeah,
all.
not that, I went through this with a fine tooth comb, we all did. I don't see anything that jumps out at me, Ron, I don't know. if you-
No, I mean, a couple years back.
There was,
Yeah.
let's say,
there
like,
was a-
maybe when I
there was
first
a lot
joined,
of
there was a little bit of
shifting and
that, is what I'm
consolidation
thinking
of
about.
positions,
Yeah.
but I would say, no, I don't see it
Mhm.
right now, no.
Well, and the other point is that there used to be odd funds that had been out from projects and stuff, and those have all been cleaned up, so there's.
Yeah, we try to
The
clean
pockets
those,
of funds have been largely cleaned up. and-
We've done a
and to-
lot of that the past year.
Yeah,
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 and even like town aid roads, we're using more of that, and we're trying to incorporate that stuff.
and I think the shortfall, I think, Terry, that you were talking about was the medical insurance.
It really hit us hard.
When we were, back when we were self-funded, and.
You know, these are-
Oh, yeah.
Those negotiations are not easy. And when you get told by the state of Connecticut that you're gonna see a 2 to 4% increase, and you're negotiating a 3-year deal, when they convey that to you, you feel it's the state of Connecticut, and you say, this is the state telling a municipality that this is where we're gonna go. And to come out 8% higher, you know how that makes us feel? When we're negotiating this, the disingenuous activity. I mean, I can't tell an employee, I'm gonna pay you X, and then suddenly, when they get here, say Y. You know, that's a big impact that we weren't expecting. It's always scary going into those negotiations with the state, but I never expected them to come at 12%. I don't think Joe expected that. I don't think Ron, Heidi, I don't think anybody
None of us.
and none of us did. And that's the most disappointing part of this whole thing, is that medical insurance coming in at 12%, 11% ultimately. And we're almost celebrating an 11% increase in 1 year, okay?
Mhm.
Like, we're here saying we get $250,000 back to Board of Ed. We started, maybe we got 28 back. Who knows, family of 4 can eat that right up. But the fact that we're celebrating that it's 11,
Oh, it's horrible.
it's just insanity to me.
So they're like, in the contract, the 3-year contract, they didn't have a cap on the increases year over year?
No.
They wouldn't do
They
that.
convey it.
And it figures they wouldn't.
They were pretty emphatic about it, John.
And they were pretty, thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was just.
I didn't want to double down,
Yeah.
but they were very
No, I
emphatic.
remember
It's the
this
right
last
word.
year,
Yeah.
yeah. That's why I was surprised. I was just curious to see if it was in somewhere in writing, but that
Anybody
makes
who-
sense that they would
yeah.
have kept that.
Anybody who was this.
Now, in defense to everyone, when the decision was made last year, we were staring down a
20 something.
20-something
Yeah.
percent increase.
25, 28.
From United Healthcare.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it
And negotiating from 28 down to 9 seemed like a really.
really good
Yeah.
deal.
Well,
Okay. Next thing, so, we're
Okay.
number 8.
Next question.
911.
We've received feedback regarding the elimination of grade 7 language, with the justification being that it's not mandated by the state of Connecticut. Can you just share details about the courses or programs available in Monroe that go beyond the state requirements? Please include specific info for each educational level, elementary, middle, and high school. Additionally, what supplementary programs are available beyond the daily curriculum, and are they free or fee-based? So the response really goes into kind of Connecticut's requirements. And like Joe, you
Yeah,
kind
this is
of
what I was. this is
summarized
actually-
before.
I just wanted to make sure I captured everything, and then
Yeah,
we did, there's the high school requirement. So the only thing you can get a high school requirement for, before high school is world language. You can actually fulfill that world language credit, which you'd still be able to do under this plan with eighth grade. You need 1 credit of world language to graduate. You can get that in middle school or high school. But
okay,
beyond that, it's really, it's to the, delegated to the local boards of education. What the program is going to be.
Okay.
So it's offered in 7th and 8th, assuming a student takes a particular language, pick Spanish.
Yeah.
How many total, is that 2 credits, 1 credit? What? moves up the lane. What does that count as?
So it would be 2
It
credits.
would be 2 credits.
Seventh grade, you would take, let's just say Spanish one,
Okay,
Spanish.
so you enter Massac with
Yeah.
having 2 credits.
And the reason why that's a tough one, it really hits us on both ends. It hits us in 7th grade, obviously. I don't know of many other middle schools. I don't know of any other middle school that doesn't have world language, at least in 7th grade. I know some have it a little bit sooner. I think we've always been comfortable with it in 7th grade. And obviously, heard there, we got 7th graders that are now going to be going to study hall rather than, an academic. But then it also, and we won't feel it for 4 or 5 years. It'll hurt on the other end because we have students that take dual enrollment classes at either the University of Connecticut or through the advanced placement program that get credits that way. Both my kids actually, I shared this with the PTO, both my kids were Spanish minors in college, and they took with them, 8 credits of UConn and 3 credits, I think, of advanced placement out of high school. My youngest daughter graduated a semester early, so definitely saved some money there. But it would hit on both ends because those students would, it would impact the UConn and the AP classes on the other end in 4 or 5 years.
To me, this is a major item. As I said to you after the Board of Ed meeting, from my family's personal experience, I know the value of this program. My oldest son did not have it available. 4 years later, my younger son did. And it made a big difference. Not only did he end up with more world language, but he also was able to take other, I guess we call electives. And so I was surprised to see it on the list. And I think, speaking as a, I guess, former parent, I think it's really critical to try to get that back in.
2 other quick things is
Sure.
most colleges want at least 2 years at the high school level, which wouldn't necessarily be impacted with that. But it's our 3rd highest dual enrollment department. So it's, I think social studies is first, then science, and then world language is our 3rd highest number of kids taking dual enrollment courses. And so probably about 15% of our kids take dual enrollment language courses before they graduate. And that's what Joe's talking about, that we wouldn't see.
You wouldn't see it because they
Because
wouldn't have
if you
the
eliminate 7,
opportunity in
you push
7,
it
it
out.
pushes everything out.
So it would be.
To piggyback on that, are you seeing colleges change their requirements where they want 3 years?
Some want 3.
I know,
Most
some
want
do.
at least 2 high school level. While you can fulfill your graduation requirement in middle school for high school,
Right,
you're not going to fulfill the college admissions requirement through that.
okay.
In your more competitive colleges.
And you're more competitive.
That, right, so then they would have to take at least 3 years in school. Okay,
Can I add just like the parent perspective?
sure.
I moved here when my sons were in 4th and 1st grade. The reason I came to Monroe, the reason this town keeps growing and Starbucks and Aldi's, it's like a very delicate ecosystem, right? So I wanted the prestige of the schools, and that's why I came, right? We looked all over and we loved that small town feel, right? That how we all kind of care for each other and take care of each other. And then, like I said, all the different opportunities they had. So when you start to cut like all these lines, like the pre-K daycare, that might sound like an easy fix, but you have some really wonderful, talented teachers, employees who work for the town and the school district, that they're gonna say, you know what? Why should I come here when I can go work at Wilton, Westport, Reading, whatever it is, instead of coming to Monroe? So that's just something like to think about as a parent perspective, coming in as our town continues to grow.
Okay,
And I know that
Thank you.
people
Can you put the other
busy,
list up?
but that's why I'm here. I know everybody's busy.
yeah,
I know
thank you.
everybody's like trying to make the best decisions with the. very
Yeah, and I don't
difficult-
mean to interrupt you, like, but I don't have public participation on the agenda, but I did allow you to get it across. Thank you. Okay, so the next question, and we kind of addressed this already. If the Board of Finance is responsible for decisions affecting Monroe children's access to listed cuts, what assurances exist that these resources or programs will remain intact if funding is restored? So we know the priority list, and I think we've answered. We've answered that, and So just to reiterate Steve's point, I think our partnership's really good, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for putting, yes, Joe, thank you for putting this in sequence.
The next question, with an executive member of the teachers union expressing support for retaining the grade 7 language program, would the union consider implementing furlough days again as a cost-saving measure? To explore this option, an estimated calculation of 1 furlough day is requested. So obviously the response is, that would need to be negotiated with the various unions and would depend on those discussions and consensus. But 1 day equates to about 157,244.
That's a really rough number. We just.
That's
we
fine.
used This
That's
week's
fine.
payroll and said, hey,
Yeah.
if we did it one day. this-
1/10 of the pay.
1/10 of this payroll.
Okay.
This year.
Okay.
That's over all our.
Yeah,
Okay, the next one is about grants. So why have grants not been a primary consideration to help address school needs? Additionally, what grant opportunities are being explored to help offset costs for essential items such as AEDs, music equipment, and culinary arts equipment? So there's a lot of info here. These are the
These are the grants.
grants that you go
Yeah,
after.
we use a
Okay.
lot. I mean, some of them are year after year. IDEA covers the cost of special education. I talked about that before. We have the partial salaries of 11 certified staff in there and 8 full salaries of paraeducators, in addition to other supplies. Title I funds are used for curriculum materials. We also have, I think, a reading teacher in there as well. Title II is used for professional learning materials, so we use that for
Mhm.
PD needs. Title III, it's a small amount of money, but we use that for our MLL students. The Perkins grant is a big one that we use to supplement our career and technology education offerings. We use that to buy equipment for the culinary room, stuff for our 3D printing programs, our wood shop, things of that nature. Same thing with Title IV for curriculum materials. Then there's been other outside grants, some competitive grants that we've gone after. The dual enrollment, we talked about that a little bit. The state put out a grant to allow us to find more opportunities for students to get dual enrollment. I've talked about UConn and advanced placement, but we have a partnership now with Southern Connecticut University, as well as some of the community colleges as well. So we take advantage of that. Summer mental health grant that Julie wrote at the middle school for our MLL students. And we have a TNTP, which is to help implement our new reading program. So there are a number of ones. We're constantly looking for them. I sent one to Rosemary. I know, thank the first selectman for the grant writer position. I know she was on one today looking at it was called Drug-Free Community. So could that help offset some of the expenses that we have when we bring a speaker like a Chris Heron or someone to the high school? So we're constantly looking for those grants. The issue with some of the grants is sometimes there's a little bit of a string attached. There's not a lot that are going to supplant operating costs. Sometimes it's, hey, we'll pay a portion and you pay the other portion, and then you have to have a system in place for this grant being removed in 2 or 3 years, and then you have to assume the full expenses of the grant. So we have to be really careful which grants we pick and choose from.
Okay.
yeah, that was an issue we had a number of years ago. There were a number of grants, and you pick up the people, and then the grants go away, and
Exactly.
it's a built-in increase,
Exactly.
to the budget. So,
Well, that's what happened with the COVID grants, right?
well, yeah,
The problems, the grants went away, but the problems associated with the
With them,
pandemic didn't, right?
yeah.
No, and I think the other thing with the COVID ones was, for some districts, you're supposed to use that money to address the learning loss that happened, and we were able to do that, but we were also, go back to the slide on enrollment, we increased by 320 kids, so we were also using that to pay for staff just to keep up with the increasing enrollment that.
Which was a byproduct of COVID.
COVID, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to jump on the coattails of the superintendent here, there is some truth to that, and you're welcome for the grant writer. I thought it was very important. Dennis Condon had called me and said, maybe we should look into this, and then we spoke and we met. And, the one thing that I said in the council chambers is just, grant writers are not easy to find. Right? So, and you know this being in education, there's certain educators have specific set of skills, just like people on the municipal side. You can hire somebody that says they're a grant writer, or they're gonna charge you a commission to write grants, but how good are they actually? We are fortunate that we found a very talented woman to do this job. And that's the reason why I was able to say, okay, let's do this, because I know she's gonna work well with people. I know she's gonna do a great job. And just to add on to what you said, a lot of these grants based on our community, you know, we don't have an airport, we don't have transit, we don't have shorefront. So there's a lot of, I'm not gonna say it's a fixed game. I'm just gonna say that when you go down the list of boxes you need to check, Monroe does not fit that criteria. But it doesn't mean we're not gonna stop trying. My goal in this was to kind of just be, you know, Monroe's popping up, Monroe's asking again, Monroe's asking again. You know, the greasy wheel gets the oil sometimes. So if we have somebody consistently going at them, and it just like in town hall, and I'm sure it's the same in Board of Ed, individual departments do their grants. But having a person that is dedicated to that is a big difference. She can chase down the information. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over next year. Obviously, from a grant standpoint, with government, things, what's going on, obviously there are some challenges, but it's yet to be seen how that's gonna land. But I'm hoping that we see, you know, an increase in grant dollars to the Board of Education, you know, and I'm confident that we will see more than we have been seeing. But yeah, I just wanted to share, you know, to people that are here that maybe do not understand grants, there are certain things that Monroe just doesn't have for some of these grants, and that's a fact.
One of the things that's a little challenging for us too is our you know, we're kind of a victim of our own success in Monroe is, you know, we're competing for grant dollars sometimes, we're competing with, you know, districts that, you know, have higher needs, higher families, price lunch students and, you know, higher numbers of that. So, you know, we're often not prioritized.
So let me just throw this out there, because I don't know your position on it or if there is one, but like for the AEDs, I know that there's foundations that exist in memory of, right, where they give dollars from, you know, from their foundation for those equipment uses. And I know that there's one opening with applications in April. So is there a position where you're only looking at state, or do you go to private foundations as well?
We'll go with you.
Okay, so maybe I'll email you what, okay. Because even, you know, some of these in the areas with culinary arts and music, there's a lot of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
private foundations.
Yeah.
Where they're not going to have, you know.
Yeah.
Real requirement for the grant writer to respond. It's just an application.
Yep.
Okay,
I would say anything grant related, you might want to maybe either send it through the first selectman's office
Yeah.
also to make sure it gets to.
right,
Yeah, because she's
Right.
she's in his office.
okay.
And one thing you were saying actually about us not qualifying, is that actually triggered something back when I was on the Conservation Commission. Or working with, we wanted to become a sustainable CT town. We're one of the only towns in the area that haven't gotten that certification. And it's basically you just process potential. But you have to like report.
You know, we are
grant
sustainable
We're
CT
We're on
accredited now.
there, yeah.
No, we got it.
There's silver, there's gold. there's all
We're
these different
bronze.
levels, right?
We're
So-
bronze, we got it this year.
Yeah.
Which opens us up for some environmental stuff.
Exactly.
But yeah, we couldn't make it to silver. We're almost at silver.
Yeah.
We're pretty close. And I think with some articulation and some new stuff, we will get there. Gold is very hard to reach.
Oh, yeah.
It's very hard to reach
With all of
without
our
a train
states.
station and airport. You know,
We've
it's
got
just
the
the
rails
way
to
it is.
trails.
And some of that stuff helps comply. It's
It does.
Rails for Trails, it certainly does. So we did get that this year. Last year. 24.
Yep,
Okay, 24 like fiscal or 24 like calendar?
all right, so just a couple
Either
more.
one, I think it works.
Couple more questions. All right, what types of donations have the Board of Ed received in the last 3 years? Thank you for the chart.
Yeah, no problem. And I can tell you, this chart probably doesn't capture everything. I think this captured a lot of the big ones. I noticed
Okay.
what's glaringly missing here, I think there's many grants at the elementary levels that, I know we have met. And I wrote like 1 year at Chucky Hollow, that's, and you said that we give about $9,000 this year to the teachers. They offer like $50 to $500 mini grants to teachers for classroom supplies, flexible seating, all kinds of things.
Okay,
So I'm sure I'm missing some things there. And again, sometimes these monies are earmarked for specific things. So we had an anonymous donation a few years ago, 3,300, but it was earmarked for STEM education. The Rotary Club donated $5,000 this year for to help fund unified sports at the elementary schools. Same thing with Kira's Light was to get the elementary unified sports started. So that's where those are. So just to give you an idea, but I know that I sprung this on folks today and said, hey, do your best to get me whatever. And I know I probably missed it.
And Rotary Club has also donated $800 the last 2 years
For books.
celebration of reading books.
Yeah.
okay,
The celebration of reading books, I actually am embarrassed of a Rotary Club member, but they do that, and we also donated. We used to donate live dictionaries, and we changed last year, and we donated sets of classroom library books. I didn't include that. I'm just trying to think of all the different things.
this is great, thank you all, because there was a lot of feedback from the community asking, a lot of questions
Yeah.
as well, so.
There's more than that, but that is our quick shot at it.
Okay. All right, the last one, other than tax dollars, what funding comes into the Monroe schools, for example, PTA donations, et cetera? So again,
So I had that on the other one. So
Pretty
all I pretty
thorough.
much put here was our federal grants, our state grants, and then you'll see the non-grant revenue. And that includes things like some of those revenue accounts, our athletic surcharges, intramural fees, parking fees, gate receipts at games, rental revenue, things of that nature.
okay. And then the trial balance, I learned before the meeting had started that that's about 1,000-page document,
Well, no,
so.
it's on the board side, it's a 220
Oh, 200.
page document. If I were to make, so I guess the question is, and I guess the other thing, and Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the detail, it's just gonna say warrant on it.
Yeah.
So you would have to drill within the warrants that are reviewed by the first selectman, by Heidi, and by the town treasurer to get to the detail of
Okay.
what the vendors are. So I don't know if the trial balance isn't gonna, if detailed trial balance is give you the level of detail you're looking for, if that makes sense. Yeah.
But there's so many of those in the categories that that's a lot.
So I guess we can, the other thing is I've gone through the board side, that there's a level of redaction that has to go through also. Does everyone want hard copies? Do you want me to send it electronically? It would have to be incorporated into the minutes for the meeting with everything else. So I guess I just wanted to clarify.
It's not. What, do you get it? Like, I feel like I've gotten some detail, like the trial balance.
Well, so quarterly, the board gets the trial balance for all the funds. We don't give you the detailed trial balance.
Yeah, just like the total balances.
So, I guess before I printed out copies, or do you just want it electronically and?
I don't know who asked the question.
I
Yeah.
think electronically would be fine, I asked for it.
Okay.
But maybe, I
Electronically?
mean, payroll would be nice, but I understand what you're saying about it just being warrants every single time, that's what it would say.
I need to explain something about this too. The financial side and the payroll side are designed to work independently. So if you make adjustments to a payroll on the financial side, it's not going to show up in a report on the payroll side. Right. So you're gonna say, why don't these numbers agree?
It's on the surplus, general ledger. What if it's like trial balance, I'm just throwing it out there, trial balance in Excel, and then we can just kind of like, there's certain balances that have a big variance or major expenditures, we could say maybe those we get the GL detail for. Does that like sound
I don't know how an
reasonable or
extract.
because you would just click into those 10 lines or something.
I mean, if they can generate it and send it electronically, if that's
I'm
okay,
like
we're not printing.
Translating for what you're asking, because you're asking for the ability to filter, right?
Well, I'm just trying to see if troubleshoot your questions.
Right? For like big discrepancies, right?
Yeah, or like if there's a certain account that you're like, hey, that's huge, I want to understand what's sitting in there. You just do that, click into that one and get the GL detail for that single item, for the single trial balance account, as opposed to giving us the GL detail for all of that for a year. That would be crazy. Just a thought.
The other thing is, are you looking for the detail for the current fiscal year, year to date, or did you want it for a
Fiscal
full
year.
school,
The current fiscal year, so fiscal year 25.
fiscal year 25? So again, the board trial balance, I was gonna give you the trial balance for the general fund, which is the operating budget, the grant and the special revenue funds. And again, that would be dumped into Excel and redacted. The town side, we were just gonna give it to you, the munis report, PDF. Is that,
I don't need a hard copy.
you don't, okay, so
No.
we'll send them, again, I think we'll need to incorporate it in the minutes, but I didn't
Okay.
wanna make 6 hard copies if I didn't need to.
Mhm.
Okay.
No.
So
Yeah,
we'll send it
no,
to the-
electronic copies.
No.
We'll send it to the board electronically then.
Yeah. All right, so that was the end of our Q&A. Are there any additional questions that, while we have everyone here?
Yes, so Ron or Joe, what kind of stuff are you doing to maybe do spend aheads for anything this year that you can pick off?
So right now,
Or is it too early?
we're doing really nothing. Actually, we're looking to, what we have projected in here is if we can pick off the Chromebooks, the prepay or pay
Retirement.
the retirement payouts early. Some of that's gonna be predicated on how electricity runs, right? And how other things, special ed overall, I think we're looking at about break even, which is pretty good, with the excess cost. But that changes,
Daily.
Yeah,
I don't wanna speak for Jen, but that changes daily, yeah.
If we were talking about today, we're definitely looking at breaking even. I can't predict what the next couple months are gonna be, but
Sure.
Yeah,
If history's any guide, you're gonna be adding more students, but
yeah.
yeah, that was gonna be my next question is where does special ed stand and if it's over, can you cover it from someplace else? Not that I really like that idea sometimes, but back to the discussion about we have the backstop, so.
Yeah, so I think we would, obviously choice number one would be to absorb everything in the current budget if possible. Okay, and then to prepay, if we can, make the retirement payments at the end of June instead of July 1st or the first week of July, then we'll do that. And then the Chromebooks also, all the schools went through their accounts and whatever they can, we're gonna be requesting of the Board of Finance, Board of Education to do a budget transfer to put that money aside for the Chromebooks now.
Okay.
And they feel they can, make it through the current school year.
Okay, yeah, my
That all
only
makes
concern is that you don't shortchange yourself in current accounts by
Yeah,
doing what we have done in the past, right? Freezing budgets in the current year and to cover something else. And all that does, in my view, is move the
yeah.
pain around.
Right now, I look at substitute lines because those are a variable. And right now we're tracking okay with those. But I think a lot of those, there tends to be more of a usage of those at the end of the school year. Snow, town side and the board side, we made out okay this year. So there's a little surplus there. I think more of a surplus on the town side than the board side, but that would be expected. So yeah, the para educators, that's a line that's fluctuated the past couple of years. That is like right on right now. We're gonna utilize that budget almost entirely para educators salary. So, best guess right now, I think we're gonna be able to utilize the, like the surplus that's being generated by the health insurance. And the reason we were gonna have a surplus in health insurance is there is a contingency in there and we didn't need it, okay? Because we didn't have, you've got to, usually it's between, about a 2% contingent, 2 to 4% contingency in that line.
One final question, I think. What is our current year cost per student?
It's about $18,600, I think.
I'm sorry,
Per pupil expenditure, 18.6.
18,663.
Thank you. I think that's all I've got.
I just have one question about the school psychologist. So one of the things you pointed out was that you're increasing some outside contractor hours and maybe some social worker hours to kind of cover what that half a head would really do.
Yeah.
So are you thinking that you would want that half a head in addition to what's already here, like there's an increased need on top of what we already have? Or are you saying that this extra, 20 hours a week or whatever it is, would then cover maybe that outside contractor cost? You
They
wouldn't
would,
need
they
that.
would take the outside contractor, the counseling that the social worker is doing,
Mhm.
and then take, roughly half the load off of the Fawn Hollow school psychologist, who is way above where everybody else is.
Gotcha. So there would be like some level of offset
Yes.
that was brought in. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense to me. And that was reflected in the budget, I assume.
Yeah.
Because it was a little hard to see from the numbers and the increases in general for the staffing. So, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I had a question on the, is there any cost sharing with the increase in health insurance? Is the taxpayers picking up the whole 11%, or is it 9% taxpayers, 2% teachers? Is there any cost sharing on the insurance side, the health insurance?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, well, so yeah, so ballpark, and you're looking at, and it depends on the bargaining unit. But you're looking at about 20, anywhere between, I think teachers and administrators are at 21.5.
So I think somewhere.
So it's,
I apologize, Nick, I didn't realize you were
Yeah.
talking about pay from the bargaining units. When you said cost sharing, I didn't see it that way.
No, that's
Yes.
Yeah. And you might have, like the custodial bargaining unit, I think the cost shares somewhere around 15.
Does that stay flat year to year
Nope.
during that?
No, it gets
There's a-
negotiated,
there's
yeah,
a-
and it has been ticking up.
So it's 20% of the 11%.
It's say ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah, so for ballpark's sake, say 1/5 roughly is picked up by the
Gotcha.
employee and the other.
The town.
What's
Okay.
reflected in ours is just the town.
Yes, yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah, the calculation that I do by bargaining unit goes, uses the different percentages by bargaining.
It's good to know.
And that's pretty typical for insurance plans. There's always going to be a sharing component with the employee and the employer, right? So.
All right, any other questions? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you.